Welcome to the G5 Hive in our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the UNLV Rebels, who finished 9-5 in 2023 and capped off their season with an appearance in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 6th. They also just got started with their fall summer camp here a couple days ago. We have a special guest joining us today. He is a busy guy. He covers the Las Vegas Aviators. He covers the Big West sports. He does work for the South Point studio. And of course, he covers UNLV Athletics. He is Matt Neverett. Matt can be found at Matt Neverett on X. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, happy to be with you guys. Really excited, man. I'm excited for myself now.
Perfect. Well, why don't you just tell us, our listeners and myself, a little bit about you and how you got to covering UNLV and what got you into broadcasting?
Yeah, so this upcoming season will be my first doing the radio play-by-play for UNLV. I had been involved in the past handful of seasons doing select television games for UNLV and helping on the radio side with engineering and production, pre- and post-game show as well. I also do football, baseball, and basketball for UNLV on the production engineering side. I do the play-by-play for the baseball side. Broadcast for the AAA affiliate of the Oakland A's, the Las Vegas Aviators, as you has mentioned. From Las Vegas originally. My dad is also a play-by-play broadcaster. My dad, Tim, is one of the Dodgers play-by-play guys right now. So I grew up all around it as far as play-by-play and Las Vegas. He used to call the UNLV team about 20 years ago, 2002 through 2004. He was doing the play-by-play. So it's a program I'm familiar with. It looks a lot different. And, I came back out here February of 2020, right before everything crazy happened, and stuck it out. It's been really good to kind of see Vegas regrow and the sports world get back to normal over these last couple of years. And, yeah, really excited to see a lot of these changes coming down the barrel with this UNLV program.
Well, those not familiar with the Rebels' offensive play style, how would you describe it?
Well, offensive coordinator Brendan Marion coming into his second year, kind of a rising star among the coaching ranks. The go-go is what he called it. It's an offense that he himself created while he was the offensive coordinator at Howard. A lot of folks remember him, or at least had heard about him originally when Howard actually came to Las Vegas and beat UNLV a handful of years ago as the biggest betting underdog to pull an upright outset in college football history. That's a number that is still the same. So that's kind of how he made a name for himself, and then worked his way through some other college teams as far as offensive coordinating and wide receivers coach, namely Pitt and Texas, before coming back to Las Vegas as a member of the UNLV coaching staff. And there's just a lot of weird elements to it. There's a lot of motion. You'll see a ton of sets with two running backs on the field at the same time. A lot of them kind of offset both to the same side as the quarterback in a shotgun look. A lot of tight ends. It's a lot of physical running. There are some downfield elements to the go-go offense, but a lot of it is just misdirection and RPO option style looks for the quarterback. It's been really interesting to see that play style develop and some of the formations and schemes come to fruition here over these last 2 years or so.
Well, let's get to the position that we're all curious about and where it all starts on offense, and that's the quarterback. This room will look totally different in 2024. Mountain West Freshman of the Year, Jaden Mayava, transferred to USC. Doug Brumfield has medically retired from football. They bring in a couple, I think it was 3 transfers, and they have one incumbent or a couple other incumbents here. What can you tell us about these transfers? Who do we need to know about this room? Who stood out in the spring? Just tell us what we need to know about this room.
Yeah, really, as of right now, the coaching staff telling us that it's a 3-horse race as far as the starting quarterback job, with all 3 guys really splitting equal reps as they open fall camp. The incumbent you had brought up is Cameron Friel. He was the 2020 Mountain West Freshman of the Year in that shortened season where UNLV actually didn't win a game, and he still won Freshman of the Year as the quarterback that saw a lot of playing time that season. But the 2 transfers that everybody's got their eye on are Haj Malik Williams, transfer from Campbell. He spent 4 years there. He was the one that got here early and had the chance to start and play a lot in the spring game back in April, and he really, really tore it up and opened up a lot of eyes. And then the name that's coming in after graduating from Holy Cross is Matthew Sluka. And Sluka spent 5 years at the FCS school and it was a really dynamic playmaker at the quarterback position, not only with the arms, also with the legs. He is an explosive downfield runner, and this offense, the go-go the UNLV runs, does have some elements for the quarterback to run. Malik Williams is mobile as well. He's definitely more of a true pocket passer, I would say. There's not that much of a difference between them in terms of the athleticism and running style with the ball. But as we open up camp, it's going to be those three splitting equal reps for the time being. Now, it's 27 days away as we record this. It'll be, just over 3 weeks by the time this comes out to the first game of the year. Obviously, someone is going to take that first snap, and obviously someone is going to be labeled as the QB1. That's a decision that'll come down, I would say, sooner rather than later, although I don't know if it's going to be one that's announced publicly. So this 3-horse quarterback race with the incumbent Cam Friel and the 2 FCS transfers in Williams and Sluka should be really exciting to keep an eye on, and it'll tell you a lot about the offensive identity of this team pretty early on in the year.
Do you have just a gut feeling? So Saluka comes in after the spring. I think we were talking about a little bit before he wanted to graduate. That's an Ivy League school, so you would figure you'd be able to pick up the playbook pretty quick. Then Malik Williams is there, in the winter time, and then you've got an incumbent. Do you feel like anybody's got a leg up just from a playbook standpoint?
I mean, in terms of exposure to the playbook and time being around it, the answer to that would be Cam Friel. And he's been given every opportunity to go out and earn this job for sticking it out. He loves Las Vegas, loves this team, loves this program, loves the coaching staff. So he's getting every opportunity to compete for that starting role. As far as, like I said, exposure to the playbook, he would, just because of the time that he's been here. Obviously, Malik Williams spending the spring here. He actually got here in the summer and started an internship program with Learfield, who hires me to do the UNLV game. So he's not only been around, he's been involved in the community, a couple of youth football camps, and running the offense in the spring game, which really looked good with him behind center. And then Sluka as the Ivy Leaguer, like I said, not going to be an issue with him of learning the playbook. It's just going to be a matter of really just having it be second nature. A guy like him, really, really smart, certainly can pick up the concepts, can pick up the schemes. I don't think anybody's concerned about that. It's just a matter of the recall and being able to do it quickly, and with it being second nature, not even having to think about it. So, I mean, there really is a difference between the three in terms of time around the playbook and the terminology and some of the unique looks, although for Malik Williams, the chaos style offense that it's dubbed, really, really good offensive coordinator at Campbell, who's now at Texas State, who's going to be really good in the group of 5 as well. And then for Sluka, he said in his press conference yesterday that they did run some elements of this go-go style in his 5 years at Holy Cross. So it's nothing completely new for the 2 new guys, but Friel does have the most time around this go-go playbook.
All right. Well, moving on to the running game, similar to the quarterback room, the running back room is going to look a little different too. The Rebels lost their leading rusher from a year ago. Vincent David Jr. has graduated along with Donovan Lester. Their standout freshman from a year ago, Jin Thomas, returns. They also brought in Michael Allen from North Carolina State and Kylan James from Central Arkansas in the winter. How did that room look in the spring?
It looked good. It looked deep. And with the way that this go-go offense is, mentioned earlier, that they're typically more often than not is 2 running backs on the field at the same time, there is a lot of rotation. I mean, they basically ran 5 deep for the majority of last year until a guy named Jordan Young-Humphreys got hurt about 2/3 of the way through the season. Then they really kind of clamped it down and made it more of a 3-man rotation. But I could see them returning to a running back by committee, which for other teams is a negative. That's a positive here for UNLV. Jaden, they call him Jet Thomas, the leading freshman rusher in the nation last year in terms of yards, 12 rushing touchdowns as well to lead all the freshmen in the NCAA. He's going to get the quote-unquote number 1 starts and spots and handoffs. But with the way that this offense is, the running backs get a lot of touches out of the backfield. If you can have a thunder and lightning style, it really, really helps. And I think that they brought in the boom with Kylan James from Central Arkansas. I saw him yesterday at practice. I mean, he's built like a fire hydrant. He is short and squat and 205 pounds at 5'10", and is a real downfield runner and a great run blocker, which you have to be in this offense because of the looks and the protection that they require coming on around the outside and one-on-ones with the running backs. Michael Allen's going to get the looks as well. Really useful in short yardage. He's also a phenomenal pass blocker from what we're told. NC State really just didn't give much of an opportunity. And the other name to keep an eye on is Greg Burrell. He's an incoming true freshman, and he's been getting a ton of touches, both in the spring and in the early part of fall practice. So between those 4, they're really going to all see a lot of touches in different scenarios, with Jet Thomas leading the room. But I think he'd be the first to tell you that it is a real team backfield as far as the running backs are concerned.
So when it comes to that running back room, can you describe what it's like with that rotation that you saw last year? Is it, hey, you got a guy between the 20s, you got a guy that does the red zone work, it's hot hand approach, it's, hey, whoever, you might have had a big long run and you kind of like to reward those guys with a touchdown, but they're really tired, so we're going to sub you out, and somebody, what you call vultures a touchdown or whatnot. How
Yeah.
do those guys get used in that running game?
Yeah, normally I think of the vulture when it comes to fantasy football in the NFL, taking some points away from a guy. But it is just kind of by committee. I mean, there are different styles, obviously. Jet Thomas and Greg Burrell are going to be the two real outside guys as far as the quick scat backs, with Allen and Kylan James really being the bowling balls in the middle, if you will. It is kind of just by what is happening on the field. You'll see early in drives a lot of Jet Thomas. They'll try to work him to the outside. He's a phenomenal pass catcher as well out of the backfield. The one thing to keep in mind, too, is that in this offense, with all the misdirection, just as what we saw last year in the first year that it was implemented here at UNLV, there were a lot of passing looks near the goal line, more so than we've seen from other teams, a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of quick little out routes, and with the tight end room the way that it is this year, and we'll get to it, there's going to be some more involvement from the tight ends, especially in those red zone situations. So while you do have that lightning and thunder style, the fact that two running backs are on the field way more often than not, it really kind of sets it up to be super, super balanced. And you'll see really four, and I think there's going to be a five-man rotation by the time all is said and done this year. You're going to see five guys splitting touches, with maybe two of them getting a little bit more than the others. They do typically also have a third down back that they kind of develop throughout the year, as far as some catching looks out of the backfield, some screen play, some draws. So it's definitely an offense that we saw develop throughout the year last year, and I think we're going to see a lot of the same, especially when it comes to how the running backs are utilized.
Well, let's move over to the passing game. That room is highlighted by the return of Mountain West first team all conference duo and Ricky White and Jacob DeJesus. Jesus got his nod there from the special team side of the ball. They also added a few guys from the portal, one in the winter and one in the spring. We kind of heard rumors that Ricky White might leave for Notre Dame, but that never really materialized. What can you tell us about, what were vibes around campus, around town, at that time?
I mean, yeah, keeping Ricky White was going to be a critical challenge and an opportunity for this coaching staff throughout the entire offseason, with the way that the college football landscape is now. Yeah, there were folks that thought that Ricky White was destined anywhere else, let alone Notre Dame, one of the top programs historically in all of college football. Although with the way his involvement in the community, and this is just from what I've seen and what I've noticed, not having really been around a ton in the winter, as far as when that stuff was kind of going down, I had a feeling he was going to stay. And maybe that's just hindsight being 2020, but he really loves this coaching staff. They gave him the opportunity after Michigan State kind of kicked him by the wayside, and he is rewarding those that have had the faith in him. And in this offense, there are a lot of downfield looks. It is a run-first offense. Don't get that twisted. A lot of folks think that this is some crazy spread, air raid style offense. Yeah, there's downfield elements, but at the end of the day, it's a zone blocking, zone running, RPO, quarterback keeper type of system with some bruising running backs on the field at all times. But Ricky White does get his looks down the field. And in one-on-ones, he's going to have a lot more opportunities this season, especially on those deep threats with a lot of the wide receivers that they brought in. I think he kind of realized that early on and stuck it out. He's turned into one of the leaders of this team, along with Jackson Woodard, really those two guys, the top two leaders on this team overall.
Well, can you tell us what the receiver room looked like here in the spring? I think most of the guys were there. Like I mentioned, there was one transfer that came in afterwards.
Yeah, Casey Kane, the Texas transfer, really going to be the number two guy this year as far as on the outside and the downfield threat, with DeJesus bringing up that slot role. And they'll find different ways, and I'll definitely touch on that in a second, because Jacob DeJesus is such a dynamic athlete. But really, Casey Kane is going to be the Robin to Ricky White's Batman, if you will. And that's nothing against Robin or Casey Kane, because he's going to get his looks, but he's definitely going to free up Ricky to get some wide open one-on-one looks on the other side. And honestly, the other name that's been brought up a lot, and he didn't really compete too much in the spring game, Jaden Bradley. He's going to wear number 0 this year. He was with Brennan Marion when he was the wide receivers coach at Pitt. He was at the University of Charlotte last year. 6'4", 200-pounder out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. He's going to be really the possession guy, I would say, outside of those two main threats in Ricky White and Casey Kane. Jaden Bradley's a name that I've heard a lot of people, including the coaches and including the three quarterbacks who spoke yesterday at UNLV practice, they all kind of mentioned Jaden Bradley at one point or another. I think he's going to be an unheralded guy that's going to get some touches.
All right. Well, you kind of touched a little bit on the tight ends. How would you describe their utilization is in this offense if somebody's never watched a UNLV game?
So last year it was a little bit different of a room because Phil Ballanguy was going to get the start this year at the tight end position, and is a guy that certainly could play on Sundays if this year goes well. Shelton Zion III was the running back last year. He graduated. He was more of a run blocker, didn't really have the hands. He had the size and the physicality, especially in the open field, but just really didn't have the hands, wasn't a pass catcher out of the tight end spot. Khalil Ballanguy absolutely is. He's a phenomenal run blocker as well, don't get me wrong, but 6'7", 265. He's a 3-year letter winner, so he's a returner from the old coaching staff, one of just a handful that stuck it out at Barry Odom's first year this season. But tight end Christian Moore, transfer from Kansas State, will be more of a run blocker. Cooper Haswell is going to get a chance, and then Christian Earls at 6'8" in his second year in the program is going to be another one that gets an opportunity in the pass game, especially over the middle. They brought in a couple of other guys as well. Jade Beasley, who's a freshman out of Liberty. Davis Ambuel, who's Anton Ambuel, the starting left tackle right now, his younger brother, transferred from Ole Miss. He was playing basketball. He's 6'7", 230, so he's got the hoops frame. Really has not had a ton of experience at the upper levels of college football. He was a guy that yesterday the SID just kind of said, hey, new guy, Ambuel's younger brother, he was playing hoops. And then we looked and, oh, yeah, he's 6'7", 230 as well. So this tight end room has some really different styles led by Khalil Ballanguy, but it's going to be utilized more. Brendan Marion at the end of last season had said on multiple occasions that he wanted to get the tight ends more involved, and now that they've been able to personalize the bodies in there through the transfer portal in their first recruiting class, I think that we're going to see that come to fruition more.
Do we see another tight end getting a lot of run like Ballanguy? Like Ballanguy last year, he almost ran the same number of routes as DeJesus. Like he was, running a lot there.
They use him all the time. And Christian Earl's a little bit banged up to get the year started. I think he's a guy that certainly could see those looks. Christian Moore, like I said, more of a run blocker, but he's got the experience coming from a Power 5 program in Kansas State. So I think that he might get some opportunities as well, although he's not much of a downfield threat. He's not going to run the seams, the flags, the posts, the corners. He's going to be more of a get into open space and sit down, which in this offense as a third option, as a check down, is just fine because there's so many opportunities for the quarterback to check down, and they're really easy reads when it comes down to it, especially off the play action.
Well, on paper, the offensive line looks to be in pretty good shape and going into 2024. 2023, that line stayed really healthy. I don't know if I've come across any offensive lines in all of these interviews that maybe were as healthy as UNLV was in 2023. They brought back 3 of their 5 starters from a year ago. First team All Mountain West right tackle Tiger Shanks highlights this room. They also returned their center, Jack Haas, and left tackle Jalen St. John's. And I think they only brought in 1 transfer, so I assume they feel pretty confident about who they have in that room to take over those guard positions. How did that group look in the spring?
Yeah, absolutely. The communication, because of the returning nature of these guys, has made a huge impact early. Barry Odom talked about it yesterday. The fact that they hit the ground running, not only in the spring, but in fall practice, allowed them to focus on other areas. So much of the focus early on is the communication and the schematics and the terminology. You got an offensive lineman that's really returning 4 out of 5 starters. Anton Ambuel played a ton last year, and it looks like right now he's the starting left tackle with Jalen St. John sliding back to his more normal left guard spot. But they're able to kind of hit the ground running, as mentioned, and it definitely allows them to focus on some other parts of this offense and some other parts of this team. I think it's going to be a real strength, and because of the running nature of this team, it's a lot of one-on-one matchups. It's a lot of communication as far as sliding protections in the pass game. But if they're able to communicate, they're able to do just about anything. And I'm knocking on as much wood as I can find that they're going to be able to stay as healthy this year as they were last year, because that was one of the reasons why they had success, was the health of the offensive line allowed a true freshman quarterback who ended up playing due to injury to have some easy looks and some open opportunities that definitely highlighted him and made it look like it was a much smoother year than it was. Not that it wasn't a smooth year at all, but you hear – first-year head coach, first-year OC, new offensive system, and a brand-new freshman quarterback after your senior leader gets hurt. Typically, that's a recipe for disaster. It wasn't the case last year. It was the best year in 30 years in program history, and I think a lot of it goes down to the offensive line. And have those guys coming back is going to be awesome, and I think, like I said, it's going to be a real strength, especially in the run game early on.
And you mentioned Ambiel going back there to left tackle, and then St. John's moving over to that left guard. What do we think about that right guard position? Austin Boyd a potential, or is this like a camp battle?
Yeah, Austin Boyd's certainly going to get every opportunity to compete for that job. I think we're going to see some Graham Keating as well, a returner at 6'5", 300 pounds. That right guard spot is going to be helped out a little bit by the fact that Tiger Shanks, who's going to be at right tackle, who is the best offensive line prospect in the Mountain West Conference as far as the NFL is concerned, who not only has played that position, but he's done it in this offense, that right guard spot. I think having him right there next to you at the right tackle position will help out whoever it is playing the right guard as far as the communication and the schematics as far as the run game and the passing attack, because they do run a ton, but the passing game is really critical because a lot of it is predicated off the play action. And a lot of that comes down to acting by the offensive line and holding the coverage for the pressure a little bit as far as the blocking for just a little bit longer. So, whoever is at that right guard spot is going to have a little bit more help than they would normally with a guy like Tiger Shanks to just off to his right shoulder.
All right, Matt, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who are you picking?
That's tough. I mean, I think Jet Thomas is going to have another big year. Ricky White, obviously. Jacob DeJesus, first team All-American in terms of kickoff and punt return last year. So they really have three dynamic athletes to work around, but that'd be too easy. I think I'll go with somebody outside of those guys. Keep an eye for Casey Kane. Obviously, a lot made about Ricky White, but I think Casey Kane on the other side is going to have some really open one-on-one opportunities because of all the focus that's placed on Ricky White at all times. I think Kaleo Balangai at the tight end spot is going to have a big year. I think he's going to be critical in the red zone. I think he's going to have some real long yards after catch type plays. He's a fast open field receiver, even with how big he is at 6'7", 260. So I think Kaleo Balangai going to open some eyes when it comes to guys looking to draft him. I think NFL teams are really going to take notice of the tight end this year.
All right, well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And for those not familiar with the Rebels defense, what kind of scheme do they run?
Yeah, under DC Mike Scherer, who followed Barry Odom over from Arkansas. It was more of a 3-3-5 last year. I think we're going to see some more elements of the 4-2-5 this year. No matter what they do as far as the scheme, they're going to be anchored in the middle by linebacker Jackson Woodard, who is one of the best middle linebackers in the country and kind of came out of nowhere after also following Barry Odom, the guy that recruited him to Arkansas and was his head coach for 2 years. He followed him over to UNLV, and really his confidence in Coach Odom was rewarded. He had a career season last year and is really, really the anchor of this defense, which has a ton more depth in the defensive backfield. That was the big issue last year towards the end of the season, especially just no depth in the defensive backfield. They really made it a focus and absolutely hammered the DBs when it came to the transfer portal this offseason.
Well, let's talk about the guys up front, that defensive line. The main loss for this D line was Darius Johnson, who graduated. Otherwise, this room looks pretty deep and brought back like 8 or so guys who had some sort of playing time in 2023. How did that unit look in the spring?
Look good as far as being able to adapt to some of the changing elements of the go-go offense. It's one of those situations almost like, I don't know, Air Force or Hawaii or something like that, where your defense goes up against such a unique and peculiar offense on a day-to-day basis that when they see a more traditional pro-style one-back system, it's kind of just like, oh, okay, we're dumbing down a lot of elements of what we do in the communication and the at the line of scrimmage audibling. So it's going to be interesting to see this defensive line with a lot of returners if they're able to plug the run in the middle, because that was the area where this unit struggled last season, was just having a true run stopper. They're going to have a lot of the same bodies, Cooper Webb, Osei Agbase in the middle. A new name as well that came in for the spring, Antonio Doyle, who was at Texas A&M and then had spent the last year or two at Jackson State. He's trying to anchor this unit that had just 26 sacks all of last year, only 12 and a half sacks coming from defensive linemen. They got a ton of sacks from Jonathan Baldwin, blitzing safeties, blitzing linebackers. Yeah, just 12 and a half sacks in a season coming from your defensive line. That's a number that won't cut it, so they're going to need to make some adjustments for this year.
So who else do you think is on that line? You mentioned Doyle and Webb. Maybe I missed another one, but who do you think are those starters there?
Webb is actually absolutely going to get the chance. Jalen Dixon. Osei Agbase is another name, returning starter from last year, that's going to have the opportunity to have a ton of playing time. Aside from that, it's not a terribly deep room. Wasali Muvesi is a returning player. He hasn't played a ton.
I'm just looking down the roster here. Max Mogelson is a really intriguing prospect, but he's a freshman. Alexander Whitmore and Tat Martinson. Those are the two names, two seniors that are going to get some chances as well, either at the defensive end spot or at that tackle position. Whitmore out of Austin P, former homeschool national champion when he was in high school. And then Tat Martinson, the junior college transfer who came right before last year. Those are going to be the other two guys. Also keep an eye on Keith Conley. That's a guy who got some playing time towards the end of last year, another JUCO transfer that should see some time on this defensive line that really rotates a ton. The reason they got so much depth is because they're going to need it. Whether it's a 3-3-5 or the 4-2-5, they're going to need to have some guys that not only are able to be flexible in terms of going in and out of the game, but being flexible in terms of moving inside and outside as far as D tackle versus D end.
All right, well, let's talk about this linebacking group. It looks strong, but maybe not that deep here in 2024. They brought back their top two leading tacklers from a year ago, and Marcel McDuffie, and then, as the aforementioned first-team All-Mountain West linebacker Jackson Woodard. How did that group look in the spring?
Look good, look confident, especially with Woodard and McDuffie leading the charge. Reason that they are running a lot of these 4-2-5 looks is because of those two guys, because they're able to. They do so many things well. Woodard is more of a true run stopper, but he finished last year with 2 picks, including a pick 6 against rival Nevada. He's able to step up in the passing game if needed, but he's more of the run stopper in the middle. McDuffie, more of a true outside linebacker if you had to pick between those two, but he really does a good job as well. He's short, he's squat, he's 6'1", 240, and does a good job of plugging holes in the run game as well. So if it is just those two guys, that's totally fine. The other two names that were brought in were Manny Powell, transfer from Arkansas, who's kind of opening some eyes, and then a true freshman out of Kansas City, Melvin Laster, who's brought in and has been given some opportunities. It's been interesting to see this linebacker core that looked to be so set. They brought in the new body. They brought in the new freshman. And I don't know if you've gotten the chance to play the NCAA video game yet, but in the Dynasty, Melvin Laster turns into a dog at middle linebacker. He turns out phenomenally. So he's a guy that, at least in the video game world, progresses really well, and he's going to have a chance to learn behind 2, if not 3, really, really solid linebackers ahead of him.
Well, when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, the defensive backfield was probably hit the hardest between the portal and graduation. However, this room is highlighted by the return of Jonathan Baldwin, Jet Elad, and Cameron Oliver. What did the staff do to address those losses in the room?
It was interesting. If you look at the names of the guys that left, you can kind of tell based on, maybe not the greatest scheme fit. I know there may or may not have been a couple of guys that, we're kind of like, hey, am I going to play? And the coaching staff basically said, no, we're going to bring in new guys. We're going to replace you. You can stay if you want. But that's a conversation that happens at every school nowadays. That's not anything out of the normal. But those 3 guys that you had mentioned coming back are really going to make a difference. And the 3 guys coming in that I think are really going to make an impact as well. Former 5-star cornerback Tony Grimes, who started his college career at UNC, graduated high school a year early to go compete for the Tar Heels, then transferred to Texas A&M, had missed just about all of last year with a lingering lower body injury, but he figures to start at one of the cornerback spots. And the 2 safeties they brought in, Power 5 guys out of Texas and Arkansas, in Jalen Catalon and Malik Chavis. Those are going to be 2 guys that, along with Baldwin and Oliver in the defensive backfield, are really going to turn this from a weakness with last year's team to a strength from this year's squad. Baldwin is more of the step up and make your sacks and come crashing in from the strong safety spot. Cameron Oliver is your true possession cornerback. I think it's going to be Oliver and Grimes as your 2 starting cornerbacks. And if that's the case, they did just fine in the transfer portal. And then between Catalon and Chavis, there's going to be some rotation going on and some different looks as well. Jet Elad also in that linebacking core, as you had mentioned, plays kind of the star, almost a nickelback role. So we'll see him dropping back in coverage a lot. So this defensive backfield, like I had said, really was a weakness last year. I think it's going to be a strength this year. We heard Barry Odom yesterday in his press conference talk about really for the first time that with how short they were personnel-wise last year in the defensive backfield, that they had to adjust their scheme and really got beat over the top in some instances where they normally wouldn't. So I think by going out and getting those 3 guys in the portal, Grimes, Catalon, and Chavis, and then returning Baldwin, Oliver, and Jet Elad at that star position, they're going to really, really have the opportunity to turn that back end of the defense into a strength.
Who needs to step up in this group in order for this defensive backfield to be successful in 2024?
I think it's the new guys. You know what you're going to get for Cameron Oliver. He leads the team in picks coming back. You know what you're going to get from Jonathan Baldwin, that head down streaking style coming in from the strong safety spot. But I'm going to put it back on those three guys that I mentioned, Chavis, Catalon, and Grimes. I think Tony Grimes especially. I'm sure personally he has a lot to prove in his final year of college football, coming off of some disappointing stops. So, no other way to put it, at UNC and Texas A&M. Those five-star guys certainly feel pressure to live up to the five-star, label. And the Catalan and Chavis Power 5 transfers in their final years, they're looking to make a dominant showing and really show that they could compete at the next level. I think that they are the type of athlete that could do that. I think Catalan especially, maybe not the biggest, but he is fast. He's a streak of lightning. So it's going to be those three guys, Grimes, Catalan, and Chavis, the three newcomers in the defensive backfield, because they're going to get every opportunity right off the bat to play.
Well, I asked you on the offensive side, so I got to ask you on the defensive side. If you have to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who are you picking?
Maybe not breakout in the sense of, hadn't been great and really started to do well, because Cameron Oliver has been a really, really good competitor and a really solid player in the Mountain West Conference for years. But all of a sudden, we're starting to hear whispers of NFL. And I think that, it's a put up or shut up year for guys like that, where, if he goes out and, if he gets hurt, like I'm saying, knocking on wood here, unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that. And the timing would be bad. But if you go out and you get shelled, you get beat over the top, you can't make your tackles, blah, 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 whatever goes into a solid cornerback at this level, that's it for him. That's it. He has to go out and show that he belongs and that he can compete at the NFL level. He's a good cornerback size at 6'1", $175, and it's just going to be about a matter of downfield presence. And if he has a great year, I think Cam Oliver is Sunday bound next year.
Well, fall camp just opened yesterday as we're taping this on a Saturday, August 3rd. Which position group or groups do you feel is the most concerning heading into camp here?
That is interesting. I think it's maybe not concerning is the right word, because there is genuine excitement just about across the board. But it's going to be about the special teams. And James Shebest, probably the best special teams coordinator on the West Coast, one of the best in the country. They're replacing one of the best kickers in the program history, one of the best kickers in the history of the Mountain West, in Jose Pisano. So it's going to be about how they replace the kicking game. And, you were expecting me to go with a bigger position group that we had already mentioned, but the special teams is a huge, huge element for this team. Marshall Nichols was one of the best punters in the country last year. He led the Mountain West in opponents starting field position, but that kicking spot, really a 4-dog race right now. They brought in 3 freshmen, including Ramon Villela, Caden Chittenden, who I think has the inside track on the job, and Isaac Mancera, Andre Biono, the returning starter, the former Fresno State Bulldog, as well, competing for the job. Jose Pisano, 27 of 29 last year in field goals, first-team All-American biathlon, and they're going to try to find a way to replace that production, because if you don't have to worry about the kicking game, that opens up so many more elements, and it gives you the opportunity to where, 4th and 2 from the opponent 30, you don't have to go for it early in the game. You can take your 3 points. You hear about the college kickers all the time. That this kicking situation, I think, is going to be one that plays out, and it's one that not a lot of people have really talked about yet. Outside of that, to give you a kind of more traditional answer, I think it's going to be about the play of the defensive line and just who gets the playing time early and how they work out that rotation, because they got a bunch of guys who play both D end and D tackle. So I think it's going to be about just finding the right spots and finding the right rotation for these guys on the D line as well.
What would you say the main strength is for this team?
Versatility and depth at certain positions, especially in the running back room and now in the defensive backfield. Like I had said, this go-go offense requires you to be flexible. It requires you to be a great teammate. Brendan Marion, his favorite quote, the offensive coordinator, all the time, his quote is, "What you do without the ball determines how much you love your teammates." So you see a ton of guys flying all around, making blocks 50 yards away from it. And it is a style of play that is fast. It's up-tempo, a lot of physical running. So it does really grind on guys, especially the wideouts that are asked to block a lot, the tight ends that are asked to block a lot. So the versatility and the flexibility of some of the positions that they have, especially on the offense, is really, really going to be a strength. And on the defensive side, I think the strength is all of a sudden the depth, not only in the DB room, but in the linebacking core as well. Some of the other guys they brought in.
Well, when it comes to the recruitment of new players and the retention of existing player, how has NIL and the transfer portal impacted UNLV?
So they did a great job in the portal this offseason, especially with the DBs. Keep harkening back to that, but that was the biggest need for them. They went out and attacked a lot of their needs, and we'll see if they end up starting either of the two FCS transfers they got at quarterback. I think, right now it likely could be one of those two, but Cam Field, the incumbent, has been given every opportunity to earn the job, and they're splitting equal reps. As far as the NIL goes, UNLV is in a very unique position because of the casinos around and a lot of the money that flows through those. And so the UNLV has it's Friends of UNILV is their group as far as their NIL clearinghouse, and they've got to deal with the Palms Casino, who's owned by the Fertitta family. Now the practice complex is named the Fertitta Family Complex, so they've been a friend of the program, big donor, big boosters forever, and so they've got it set up with the Palms Casino and Resort as far as a lot of NIL things, a lot of NIL events. And that's definitely something that is developing. We saw, obviously, all the Power 5 teams with the resources, the time, the money, the bodies at the end of the day to go crazy with NIL right off the bat. Not as many car dealerships out here as there are in Tuscaloosa, Alabama as well. But we're starting to see it develop with both the football and the basketball program here at UNLV as far as the tie-ins with the local casinos, tie-ins with some car dealerships, I say in all seriousness, and some of the other local businesses. So, I mean, Vegas is big business as far as money flowing in and as far as the entertainment industry. So we're starting to see a lot more tie-ins there. And I think moving forward, Vegas, like I mentioned at the beginning, is in a really unique position to help out this program and to do some really, really cool, unique things that you just wouldn't get anywhere else. You can't go to Oxford, Mississippi and go to the biggest casino in the world. You can't go to, Blacksburg, Virginia and go on the highest freestanding building west of the Mississippi. I mean, there's so many different things to do in Las Vegas and so many cool experiences and industries that it's really, really going to be developing. And it really has already started with UNLV with their retention of some of the big guys like a Ricky White, like you had mentioned.
Well, it seems more and more across college football that the demands of a head coach are really turning into more of a general manager type role between recruiting high school seniors, player retention. It almost seems like game to game now, and then fundraising and less of kind of the X's and O's part of the role. What are you seeing there happening at UNLV?
I mean, generally speaking, I would agree with that sentiment that it is becoming more of a general managing type role, but that's the bear that we've created in college football. And keep in mind, too, that the fundraising element of it may look a little different now, but that has always been a part of a head coaching job at a big-time D1 program, even at a school the size of UNLV that has now 5 winning seasons in the last 30 years. But it's a program on the rise. And for Barry Odom, yeah, he loves the X's and O's, but he's really unique in the sense of turning things over to his coordinators and position coaches. I mean, if you go watch a UNLV practice, Barry Odom's not doing a lot of one-on-one with players. He's not doing a lot of instruction as far as, telling, hey, we're going over here. We're doing this next. The plan is laid out ahead of time. It is 24 sessions of varying times. It is a tight-knit, well-run, well-oiled machine as far as the practice plan. And a lot of it comes down to the coordinators and the pitching coaches. The position coaches. I mean, here in the middle of baseball season. But it's really hands-off approach, and that sounds worse than it is because his thumbprint is on every single part of this team, Coach Odom. But he does a really good job of trusting and turning things over to his coordinators in terms of the day-to-day instruction, grinding with the guys, the plan for practice, the plan for lifting, the plan for recovery. So, while that is certainly a changing role as far as a D1 head coach right now, turning into more of a, general manager style, like you had said, it's something that Barry Odom, I think, kind of does anyway. That's just kind of his coaching style.
Well, what does success look like for the Rebels in 2024?
So, I mean, last year, 9-5 at the end of the day looks great. Got to keep in mind, they were 9-2 going into their final game of the regular season. They had lost to San Jose State, got into the Mountain West Championship and got to host the Mountain West Championship game against Boise State on a tiebreaker. Lost that game with Boise State taking a commanding early lead and really just never surrendering the momentum in a true road game that played as a neutral site game. And then they lost in the bowl game against Kansas, who they'll rematch against in the third game of the year this year. That Kansas team, unheralded last year, they're really getting all the credit they deserve this year as far as being one of the top offenses in college football. And Coach Odom said even yesterday in his press conference that they just didn't have the depth to compete in that bowl game. By that time last year, there were guys already with a foot out the door that played in that game. There were guys that opted out of that game. They didn't have a lot of depth to begin with, especially in the defensive back room. So the depth is going to be a big thing. I think if they can get to 9 wins again, that is a phenomenal year. The schedule is a little bit tougher this year with 3 Power 5 games at Houston, home against Syracuse, and then at Kansas. So they're going to be really challenged at the beginning of the year to really, see who they are right off the bat. Now, the last 3 games of the year, San Diego State, San Jose State, Nevada, 3 new head coaches, 3 games at the end of the season where those 3 programs with a ton of turnover might not have a lot to play for. So if UNLV can have a really, really good record through the first 8, 9 games of the year, they've got an opportunity to finish with 8, maybe 9 wins again if everything goes right at the beginning of the season. I mean, this year is going to be weird in general. 5 Friday night games. It's the first time ever. 11 out of 12 games on national TV for the first time in school history. They're also going up against 8 first-year head coaches in 12 games. So it's going to be some unique challenges and opportunities, like Coach Odom likes to say. He never says challenge. He says opportunity. It's going to be a unique opportunity to go up against a lot of new schemes, a lot of new guys and new programs. So there's going to be a lot of unknowns until, the whistle blows, that coin is flipped, and the opening kickoff is on the way. So yeah, I 7, 8, 9 wins, very, very doable, especially if they can get off to a really hot start at the beginning of the year.
Well, Matt, we've talked a lot about different positions. We've talked about NIL. We've talked about special teams. Is there anything else that you want to share or think that we should know about this 2024 UNLV Rebels?
Just keep an eye on the offense, man. The defense is unique, and it's going to be much, much improved, especially in preventing deep passes ahead of them. But this offense is going to be so much fun. It's going to be one of the more fun offenses to watch in all of college football. And I think last year UNLV took a lot of people by surprise, and a lot of big-time people who may not be involved in the program. UNLV, they've never been any good. This is a flash in the pan under a first-year head coach. Teams are going to adjust. Yeah, adjustments are going to be made. But this offense is going to develop as well. Brennan Marion is a rising star in the coaching ranks. He will be a head coach someday. For his sake, he'd rather it be sooner than later. For the sake of the UNLV program, I hope it's later than sooner because he's so fun to watch, so fun to be around. He cares. He cares so much about these players. He is such a personalized style of coaching. This offense is going to be so unique. Whoever is at the quarterback, that quarterback battle is going to be the storyline up until the opening kickoff on August 31st at Houston. The running back room is deep. The running back room is unique. They're going to have some really, really kind of weird, funky looks. And I think we're going to see a lot more about UNLV's offense from the national scale this season.
Yeah, I think a lot of people got introduced to UNLV there against Kansas. I know they lost, but that was a pretty entertaining game to watch. But, hey, Matt, I want to thank you again for sharing your time and knowledge with us today.
Absolutely. Happy to help anytime. And yeah, best of luck on the rest of these little previews because it is a lot of work, and I commend you on the awesome work that you guys do.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Hey, if you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you are listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.